All right, so how about Tyjae Spears, the newest member of the Tennessee Titans? They selected him with the 81st overall pick, and I'm interested in, first off, we'll talk about the player in just a second, get into the film and all that good stuff. But I think one thing that you do have to wonder with this stuff is there has been some talks about a potential Derrick Henry trade. Is Derrick Henry going to be traded? And we still don't know if he is or isn't, but given the fact that those talks are happening, it does feel like the Titans have now, with a couple of their selections, kind of prepared for the future a little bit. Not that you tend to draft a running back for the future, but for Tyjae Spears, I do wonder if this is a bit of they're saying, hey, if we do decide to go out and trade Derrick Henry, well, now we're in a situation where we can do that. We don't have to say no to it because we don't have any running backs, which wouldn't be the right play anyway, but at least you now have a little bit more freedom there. I do think that Tyjae Spears is someone who's a very good running back, and I also think that he's someone who, if you just put him in as sort of in a backup situation behind Derrick Henry, maybe the idea is, hey, this could, if you don't find the correct trade for Henry, you could still be in an okay position because you now use him as a backup, and now you can prolong Derrick Henry, make sure he doesn't get hurt and all that good stuff if you decide to keep him. And listen, one of the things about Spears as well is that, one of my critiques, which again we'll get into, I don't think he's a great blocker. I think he's okay, but I don't think he's great. Well, now you don't necessarily have to use him as a pure 3-down back, although I would say, ideally, if you have Derrick Henry, the kind of guy you want is a guy who's a 3rd down back if you're going to use him as a backup, which I don't know if Spears is because of his, only okay pass blocking ability, which does make me sort of lean towards, I think they're drafting him with the expectation for him to become a starter for them, which again, pick 81 is a much better time to be drafting running backs than pick, 8. Right? And this is part of why I like drafting running backs later as opposed to earlier, is oftentimes a guy like Tyjae Spears ends up having pretty similar value to a guy like, even Bijan Robinson, someone who was selected super high up. That does tend to be the case, is that the number one predictor of, where you were drafted in the NFL draft, the biggest thing that predicts is how much you get paid on your second contract and how many carries you get, not so much, what your actual value is. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of this. I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of this selection, but I'm very interested in it, and I would say I'm a fan of it. I think he's a good halfback, and right around here, when we're past the 75 pick mark, yeah, go ahead. The reality is, at this point, you're probably only drafting depth players anyways. Yes, there will be some stars that come out of it, but that's going to be mostly fluky. So getting someone who could be a starter, even if it's not necessarily a super important position, this is where I'm okay with doing it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the pick, but now let's get into the player. So these are Tyjae Spears' Pro Football Focus grades, which, again, it's good. Keep in mind, though, that, not a position that this tends to matter too much. Not a lot of evidence supporting guys of good PFF grades at the running back position become good NFL players, but it's still nice to look at, as you do see that his grades are, last year, very good, over 90. It also was over 90 in 2020, but keep in mind, very small sample size, only played in 3 games, only had 37 carries in that situation, still had 7.4 yards per carry, which is nice to see. Last year had a 6.9 yards per carry, so definitely gotten plenty of yards, and 19 touchdowns on top of it was a big part of his offense. But let's talk about what he can do well. Let's talk about this play, where what's going to happen is it's just going to be this is the receiving play. It's going to be you're going to flip it to Tyjae Spears. The idea is you have a couple of receivers who are lined up towards the top of the screen, so towards the offense's left, one of them being a tight end. They both kind of clear that area out. Hopefully there's a little bit of room for Spears to get open. Watch how when this play begins. Quarterback is going to flip it towards Spears, and at this point, it's well defended. There isn't a lot of room for Spears to do much. However, watch this move. That's a great, very shifty move. He's able to get around and pick up a decent gain there. So again, didn't turn a 5-yard gain into a touchdown, but it was a great move to showcase what he can do and showcase his talents, which is why I'm showing it. Heading over to this play, really, he does move in ways like, it's just so shifty and so explosive, which is very exciting for me personally when I'm watching him. And he's not an overly small back, 5'10", to 101 pounds. That's pretty solid, and still just 21 years old. He's obviously not a huge back either, but again, when you're talking about guys who are shifty, sometimes these college guys are shifty because they're, you know, they weigh 170 pounds and it's easier for them to move around. Not exactly the case with Spears. I think this play is going to be a really good example of exactly what he can do effectively. Look at how when this play begins, you do see that there is, you know, a bit of a running lane opening towards the left. Now, it does appear as though there is a defensive player who can come in and make the play, but there's actually an offensive player who's just off screen who can run over and block him. So there's definitely a window, but really just watch how shifty he is and how he moves on this play. Look at how he goes. I mean, it's like a snake or something where it's like moves so quickly that it's almost like unhuman how he's able to do that and get around that well while still staying at a high speed, which is definitely something you like to see when you're evaluating running backs and how well they can run with the football. Now, heading over here, one thing that I always like to bring up is it's not just how well do you run at the football, right? Especially for these guys who aren't necessarily going in round one of, you know, you got to make sure you get playing time, and you got to make sure that you get significant playing time. And the reality is sometimes you see these backs who get drafted for their great running ability who just never really amount to anything because they can't be the complete back. We've already seen him be a good receiving back in this video. I trust that he can do that stuff, but you have to be able to block. And if you can't block, quite frankly, it turns into disasters sometimes because then opposing teams, you know, they might know that the running back just isn't blocking on that play, and they're going to blitz the hell out of you, and they're going to try you. And so, again, for someone like Spears, who isn't the biggest back in the world, how well can he block? Well, on this play, I have circled two defensive players in black. They will both be rushing the quarterback, so Spears is going to have to end up blocking one of them. So, two things he has to do on this play, right? First, he has to read the play and figure out who he's supposed to block. Second, he has to then be able to actually pull off that block. Those are, you know, two parts, and you want to be able to do both, right? As you see for Spears, he is going to get in position, and then he does get blocked back a bit. He does. He's, to me, passable in the blocking game, which is all you need, is passable, but you're not putting him in for his blocking ability. You're just not. That's not his thing. He is a running back, if that makes sense. That's what you like about him. And listen, he can hit some home runs. He really can. If you can get him in open space, I trust he can be gone on certain plays. And the blocking, to me, is good enough. I wouldn't not draft him because of it. To me, the only time I'm really concerned are the guys who just can't block, and that's not Spears. He gets in position, he'll get run over a little bit, but that's okay. You're still in position. You're still not giving up the immediate pressure, and hopefully since they're blitzing, someone can get open pretty quickly. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Spears and on this selection. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.